Hello and welcome to Ticker Talks, and yes, it is time to talk. First up, I would like to acknowledge that this segment is being held on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and I pay my respects to elders both past and present, and of course future as well. Now, the team at Polaron International Group are using their expertise, networks and systems to empower people and organisations by connecting them through language, which is an exciting prospect. And joining me today are some wonderful people working to make changes in how language services are delivered and developed. And Eva Hussein is joining me from Polaron. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. And we're both excited and nervous. Let's put it
Excited and nervous. It's our first episode, but let's get right into it. I want to bring in my first guest now, and Sadia Ali has a diverse range of lived experiences, arriving in Australia as a refugee and working as a community educator, electoral officer and liaison officer. And Sadia is here to tell us all about her experiences. Hello, are you there?
Hello, thank you, Rick and Eva for having me. Thank you, Polaron, for having me. It's really always a pleasure to have be here with you.
Now, Sadia, thank you for your time, of course. So in your experience, what are some of the best practices when it comes to engaging with diverse communities? Can you just take us through that?
Yes, why not? But before that one, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we're meeting and also pay my respects to any of the Aboriginal people who are with us today virtually. So according to your question that you're talking about, the best practice of community engagement, based on my experiences, I think community engagement is one of the critical and most sensitive areas of the work that I've done, as it requires a lot of deep understanding of the culture and cultural dynamics, demographics of the groups where they're coming from, adaptation and adopting for the best suited approach of the communication, discovering and approaching the finest people, influencers, community leaders from within the community, being respectful and have extensive understanding of the level of understanding of our targeted individuals, groups, communities. That is, for example, languages spoken, sub-languages, dialects, and appropriate accents as well. So community engagement is not just about approaching the community and just having that communication. It's all about having a deep understanding and being respectful and having that trustful relationship with them.
It's impressive stuff. What are some of the things that you've done to assist in these areas as well?
So, as I said, it is very critical for me to engage communities and especially wider communities. I try to adopt every possible ways in order to be involved with the community. The first and foremost thing is that I should be clear about what is, the purpose of my engagement. I should be clear about the purpose, and then be very simple be very clear, and be very concise in terms of how to or what do I want to approach for. Because if you are not if you're not clear about your purpose, you may be ending up confusing people and may end up losing your trust. And people only trust when the purpose is clear, when the messaging is clear, when the outcomes are clear to them. So this is how I mostly approach with the community groups and leaders around me.
And it's interesting because that trust is, of course, very valuable. So why should service providers ask communities and, of course, communicate with them what they want before translating a piece of text or a video, etc.?
The answer to this question is within your question, because as this is for the community, it should be for the community, by the community, and from the community, because community, they are the experts. They know about they know about the cultures, their own cultures. They understand. They have the knowledge of their own cultural backgrounds and heritage, and have influence on the people that follow them. And also, another thing that I want to bring an attention to is that by consulting the community, is that we are, giving them an autonomy a leadership and also a platform where we're building that relationship and bringing them inclusion, like being inclusive. And we are not excluding them by not asking them anything. And this is about them. And the other thing that is that people attract people. And non-faces are very important. So this is why it is important to have that consultation of the community regarding any program that we will be providing to the community.
Sadia, some wonderful insight there. Thank you so much for your time and coming on the program today and sharing some of your experiences with us. We'll have to double check back in with you down the track, and thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay, now I think it's time for our next guest. If we're ready to do so, let's bring in Nadia Chaves. And she comes to us from CoHealth and is an infectious disease specialist. And she's here with me now. If we want to bring her in and take a seat, by all means, come on through. It's always hard connecting online, offline, in studio, but thank you so much for joining us today. Now, your expertise also is engaging with community engagement with public health. Why does it make sense to communicate in languages that everyone can understand, and how do you go about doing that in a way that's like easy for everyone?
Thank you, Chris. Thanks so much for having
me.
Not
at all. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Look, I think it's a matter of basic respect, actually, and it comes back to the basic principles of person-centered care, which means that everyone just wants to be treated taking into account their needs, values, and preferences. But what we know in healthcare is that it provides better and safer healthcare, both in public health and in clinical medicine. People get better quicker if we actually are able to explain things to them in a way that they understand.
Can you take us through a little bit of your background in the healthcare sector, just quickly for the audience?
So I've been a doctor for over 20 years. I've worked in community health and public hospitals, mainly in Victoria, but also in the Northwest and in the Northern Territory. And the thing that I learn most of all in working in all these different areas is really that it comes down to good healthcare is about finding out what that person really needs. And unless we ask them in a way that they understand, whether that be in language or even in with non-technical jargon, not using the technical jargon, it makes for better care.
What are some of the things you've seen that actually work really well when engaging with multicultural communities, just out of interest?
Yeah, well, I guess first to acknowledge is that unless you are an Aboriginal person or a Torres Strait Islander person, everyone is a settler here, and there are so many different cultures here. And I think unless we kind of recognise that people have different needs, and the things that I've seen that work well actually starts with asking people what they need.
Yeah, right.
And not presuming, because if we do presume that we know what they need, we can get it wrong.
Do you think presumption's very much a part of some of the problems that we face?
I think what happens sometimes is we have a bit of a one-size-fits-all policy sometimes with healthcare.
Yeah.
We have this, look, to start with, we've got the best healthcare system in the world. I think we've done amazingly on so many different levels, especially with COVID. It's been fantastic. However, I think there's a real opportunity to recognise, though we are a fair go kind of society, if we treat everyone exactly the same, people are going to fall through the cracks. And that definitely happens. But when it's done well, when we actually find out what people need and tailor care to their needs, they end up getting better quicker or end up preventing infections and everything else. And I think a great example of that actually happened in the Aboriginal community controlled organisations. There were no deaths from COVID in the whole of Australia in Aboriginal communities.
Really?
Yes, really. Because of the amazing community organisation, the way that community and healthcare worked well together. It was amazing. And I don't work in that sector, but I have so much pride to see how, when you see things done really well like that, we can learn so much in healthcare generally.
That's incredible. I didn't know that. That's very, very great to hear. Yeah. And what are some of the dangers of what can happen if we can't communicate clearly? So if things break down?
So absolutely, there are so many different things but at worst case, people can die. And I've unfortunately seen that happening time and time again in the public hospital sector, in the community sector, when people don't necessarily understand the right sorts of messaging. I can give you a very practical example. There's some basic if you're going for elective surgery
Yep.
in this country in a public hospital, your appointments are not necessarily made in a language that you can understand.
Right.
And your pre-admission forms, you're sent a form in the mail that you have to fill out. And I had a client in I work in a community health centre as a specialist in co-health. And he came to me with a pre-admission form that was 3 pages long from another hospital in quite technical English. And he speaks English, but it's not his preferred language. And he said, look, can you help me fill out this form? And it was for a life-threatening Category 1 procedure, meaning he needed an urgent scope and he needed to put on the waiting list, the shortest waiting list possible. So we helped him fill them out. And I actually called up the public hospital and I said, please can you make sure you give him information in a language he understands, because he needs some help understanding what's going on.
And what was their feedback or response?
I didn't get any response, but not only that, he came to see me about a week after he ended up being in hospital, having to call an ambulance because he experienced a bleed and he was waiting for a scope. And he came and said, you know, Dr. Nadia, you'd been telling me watch out because this could happen, and I was waiting for the scope, but it happened anyway. I had to call the ambulance, and he nearly died. And at the consult, he whipped out his phone. He said, and I got this text message. Can you tell me what it says?
Oh, no.
And it said, you have failed to attend your pre-admission clinic appointment for your scope.
I'm gobsmacked by that story.
And this happens time and time again. But this is just one small example. But looking after people from diverse backgrounds, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's a low-hanging fruit that we should at least work out first what language they'd like to communicate in.
It's incredible to think. And what about the written? I mean, he obviously got messages as well, but not only is it, what are some of the services, I suppose, is my question, that they offer or could offer?
So what I do is with all my clients, I make sure that if they don't understand, the first thing they do is know the interpreter telephone number. And so they know that they can call. This is an amazing service. We've got it nationally. You can use this telephone number and the interpreter will then call whatever telephone number you want to know and speak to you in your language.
Wow.
And so they're able to do that. So I empower my clients that have a preferred language other than English. I think often even people who do speak English sometimes don't understand the technical stuff that happens, and so that's another...
Especially when it comes to medicine and all
so
that.
making sure that we empower the people that I serve, I care for, with the tools they need to get their health right. I think that's a huge part of it.
Nadia, thank you so much for coming in and explaining a few of these stories. I'm sort of shocked, and it's an incredible space to be engaging with and learning more about. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, a lot of really great points from today's episode. Eva, thank you for joining me and coming back to represent Polaron. And of course, today's Ticket Talks is powered by Polaron, and you can always head to www.polaron.com.au to find out how they are connecting communities. I'm Mike Loder, and thank you for joining me today.
We've got a lot of work to do.
Ticker News. Be part of the change.